This tutorial is brought to you by Squarespace, the best place to build a beautiful website. $7 is roughly what it is going to cost you to buy googly eyes online, even the big ones, and that is too expensive. Why should we invest money in this if we can do it for free, where all it's going to cost us is a bunch of hours in manual labor and tracking, simulating, compositing, and this way we'd be able to put googly eyes on footage that, we didn't record ourselves and just change things up on the fly? Yes. I think this is going to be a good idea. So it turns out that simulating googly eyes is actually super simple, and that makes sense because when you think about it, the eye is composed of three parts, namely the bouncing black cylinder, or BBC for short, the glassy or plasticky casing, I'm not really sure what it's actually made of, and the white base to hold everything together. And honestly, it really makes sense to think about these as two objects, like a container and an object bouncing in that container. But whatever, how do we do these kinds of simulations? Okay, so if we delete the default cube and replace it with a sphere, we can scale to the 3D cursor to flatten out the bottom hemisphere and bring down the top one, which will separate into its own object, meaning we've made the glass piece and also the base. Now use extrusion to give the base some thickness and the solidify modifier to do the same thing for the glass, where we can give it a principled BSDF with some transmission and low roughness to get that glassy look that I've talked about before, and for the base we'll just settle for a colored principled BSDF, doesn't matter. Yeah, that looks pretty good, so let's just wedge a cylinder in there, which is going to be our bouncing object. Join the case components, making sure to reset all the origins, and with our cylinder as a rigid body and the case as an animated rigid body, we finally get, after all this work, yeah, that simulation's not working. I'm gonna teach you how to fix it, but after I tell you about something that does work, which is the sponsor of this video, Squarespace. And Squarespace is a service that lets you make websites without any of the coding. It's literally just templates, drag and drop. You don't need to go into the weeds unless you want to, and you can create beautiful websites with Squarespace, like my googly eye themed website, I guess this time, was made with Squarespace. And some features of Squarespace you might be interested in are analytics, so you can track how many people are going to your website and what that demographic information is. Also email campaigns, so you can send out your personal or brand message to, people that are visiting your website. And while Squarespace is already affordable at an annual subscription at less than $10 a month, I'm about to make that deal a whole lot sweeter, so listen up. If you click my link in the description, you can save 10% on your first purchase of a website or domain, so go make a website with Squarespace. But now let me show you how to fix the simulation, track the stuff, and tutorial stuff. So yeah, the simulation isn't working, and that's because in Blender's eyes, whatever that means, our two objects are intersecting or overlapping, making the physics weird, so somehow we need to tell Blender that our case object actually has an interior. To do this, just set the collision type of our case to mesh, which kind of solves the problem, but it's still super jumpy. So let's also bring down the margin value, and yeah, that's a whole lot better. Blender actually calculates these physics fast enough for us to play around with this in real time, or instead we can disable the physics, use this button, which basically lets us hand animate this case on the fly, and when we re-enable our rigid body world and cache our simulation, we get something that's actually pretty stable. Also, quick tip, you can mess around with the speed value to get different types of simulations, but where it really gets cool is you can parent the case to some other object and still calculate the physics. This means that if we can track some real-world object and extract the motion, well, then we can attach some googly eyes to it and, save $7, I guess. So you know how when you film any kind of footage, you can start dropping trackers like babies, and after a bit of manual work, get a camera solve that calculates where the camera was moving? Well, it turns out that you can do the same thing with an object in your scene, and as long as all your trackers are on that object, then we'll have a camera moving around it, which will look correct from the camera view. Now, of course, this isn't technically the correct way to do things, since we have a stationary object with the camera moving around it instead of a stationary camera with a moving object like it's supposed to be, but this is actually super easy to fix. First, add in an object in the movie clip editor, which we can copy all the original camera trackers to and leave the camera object blank. Next, we do an object solve instead of a camera one, and since we have these trackers in 3D now, let's just import in all those points as geometry so that we can finally align an object to these points, add in an object solver constraint set to the tracked object with set inverse, and yeah, now we have a moving object that we can use to calculate some physics, so just attach the googly eyes to that.